Give me a second. Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the fifth and last session of Here Are the Steps We Took Beginner Meetings. My name is Rosemary, and I will be reading for you tonight again. I can't believe you guys have stuck around this long. So, um, let's see. Let's open up with the Serenity Prayer after a moment of silence. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. All right, let's begin tonight with a brief review of the past 4 weeks. During the first week of our journey together, we took step one. We covered the material out of our basic text, which led us to admit to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics or Al-Anons or whatever it is that we're here for. During our second week, we're powerless, pretty much is what we're talking about. And during our second week together, we were led through steps 2 and 3 and the beginning of step 4. And in step 2, we became willing to believe in a power greater than ourselves, which will solve our problem. In our third step decision, we discovered that we had to quit playing God. Why? Because it didn't work. Therefore, we made a decision to turn our will, which is our thinking, and our lives, which are our actions, over to the care of God. We found that this decision was the keystone of the new and triumphant arch through which we passed to freedom. And remember, the keystone, like in a brick archway, is that little wedge-shaped brick up at the top. And if that thing isn't perfectly set in place, that whole thing is going to come falling, crashing down around your head. So how important is that keystone? Please turn in your big book to page 63. Oh, my favorite page. We affirmed our step 3 decision with what has been termed over the years as the third step prayer. For anyone who'd like to say this prayer with us right now, it can be found in the second paragraph of page 63, where it says, "We were now at step 3. Many of us said to our Maker as we understood him, God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always." That's a great prayer. After making this third step decision, the book says that we need to act at once, launch out on a course of vigorous action, which includes steps 4 through 9, or else our decision will have little permanent effect. We had to get down to causes and conditions. The next step in this phase of our development was a personal house cleaning. We took an inventory of our resentments and we discovered exactly how all our troubles were of our own making. We discovered that selfishness and self-centeredness is the root of our troubles. From this root also stemmed dishonesty, self-seeking motives, fear, and harms to others. And the list can go on and on. The process of steps 4 through 9 is a strenuous effort to face and be rid of the things in ourselves which had been blocking us. In other words, only after taking the middle 6 steps are we actually able to turn our will and our lives over to the care of our higher power. By taking stock of our lives in step 4, we started to see the obstacles which had been blocking us from God and others, and started to see these defects were of no use to us if we, oops, sorry, I lost my place. If we were to begin to live life on God's terms. In the next few steps, we begin to get rid of these things that blocked us from God. In step 5, we discussed the exact nature of our defects with God and another person or persons. In step 6, we became willing to have God remove from us the things we found objectionable in steps 4 and 5. We also covered the material in the big book for step 7, where we humbly asked God to remove these defects of character, which are of no value to us. Also, during our discussion last week, we read about and gave directions and guidelines for steps 8 and 9. We hope those of you who have been taking the steps with us during the past 4 weeks have started to make a list of all those you had harmed and became willing to go out to make amends. It's been proven time and time again that those who do not complete their house cleaning are more likely to drink again. It's just that way with us alcoholics. Remember, during our first week together, we discovered that we had only two alternatives. One, to be doomed to an alcoholic death, or two, to live on a spiritual basis. When we have completed steps 1 through 8 and have commenced making amends to those we've harmed, we are prepared to begin to practice principles for living a spiritual life. Tonight we will discuss steps 10, 11, and 12, which, if practiced consistently on a daily basis, will show us how to continue to move towards spiritual growth and recovery from addiction and alcoholism. Before I introduce uh, well, I did already myself. This session will be a little bit over an hour, hour and a half, and here we go. I hear people talk about the 10, 11, and 12 as the maintenance steps, but I've also heard people say, I don't want them to be maintenance steps. I don't want to just maintain. I want to continue to grow. And that's what my experience of 10, 11, and 12 has offered. So Session 5, steps 10, 11, and 12. This is the last in the series of 5. Here are the steps we took beginners meetings. During this session, we will spend much of our time sharing some techniques and the results of seeking and improving conscious contact with the God of our understanding. We will begin to experience the life-changing spiritual awakening that occurs as we move from a life run on self-will to a life guided by the vision of God's will. We have been trying to demystify the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous and to show you just how simple the program truly is. For those of you who will be completing your steps tonight, we congratulate you for your efforts and we welcome you to the sunlight of the Spirit. Please remember that in order to remain spiritually fit, we must be of service to other alcoholics or others. We do not help them because they are sick. We help them because we are sick. And part of our recovery is that we need to be positively contributing to others. We can think of no greater service than helping others through the 12 steps so that they too can find AA's spiritual solution to alcoholism. It is essential that we never forget that recovery is an ongoing process. We don't just take the steps once and then rest on our laurels, which means to settle for past achievements. We cannot stay sober today on yesterday's spiritual awakening. Remember, alcoholism is a subtle foe, cunning, baffling, powerful. And let me also include patient. We must repeat the process again and again in order to remain and grow in our fit spiritual condition. So please come back or go through these steps, these beginners meetings again. They're going to be posted on that YouTube channel, so they'll always be available. We're sure that you will gain additional insight into the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous, and continue to deepen and broaden your relationship with the one who has all power. That's in quotes. Welcome to the fifth session of the 1.5 hour beginners meetings. This is the payoff. This is what we have been waiting for, to recover from the seemingly hopeless state of spirit, mind, and body known as alcoholism. By completing the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, you will experience the spiritual awakening that will change your life forever. It's a pleasure for me to be a part of this life-changing process and to watch people grow spiritually right before my very eyes, which is very true. It's been like that every time I do this. So that we can complete each session within an hour and provide time for questions, we ask that you write anything down that you don't understand or need clarified and keep it till the end of the session, and we'll have answer questions at that time. So let's see who's ready to be rocketed into the fourth dimension of existence that the big book writes about. Please turn in your big book to page 76. Before we go on to steps 10 through 12, we would like to take steps 6 and 7 together as a group in case you didn't do it when you did your fifth step. Starting with the second line on page 76, the book now makes a statement and then asks us two simple questions. We have emphasized willingness as being indispensable. Are we now ready to let God remove from us all the things which we have admitted are objectionable? Can he now take them all, every one? If we still cling to something we will not let go, we ask God to help us be willing. So in the last three sentences here, the book asks us two questions, and depending upon what our answer is for these two questions will depend upon whether we need to involve that last sentence. Like we said before, please realize that the book wants us to take our sixth and seventh step an hour after we shared our fifth step. And in case the person who heard your fifth step didn't direct you to page 76 of the big book, we'll take you through the sixth and seventh step now. Also, if you already have started working with the sixth and seventh step, we ask that you now do it again with us together as a group. So let's start by getting quiet so we can invite God in and ask ourselves the first sixth step question, which is for nothing more than the willingness, or to be entirely ready to have God remove the defects of character that blocks us off from our higher power working in and through us. These unsaleable goods or shortcomings were disclosed in our fourth and fifth steps. So let's take a moment of silence to reflect on whether we are entirely ready by asking ourselves if we are willing to let God help us with these defects. Okay, now please also ask yourself the second sixth step question, which is if you believe that the God of your own understanding is capable of now taking them all, every one. All right, thank you. Notice that the book says in the last line of the first paragraph on page 76 that if there is still a defect of character that we are not willing to ask God to help us with, we pray for the willingness. That is all there is to the sixth step. Is the God of my own understanding capable of removing my defects? Am I willing to ask my higher power to help me with these shortcomings? If I am not yet entirely ready to turn over one or more of these human failings to my higher power, I prayed to ask God to help me become willing. So will all those working the steps with us these past few weeks who have completed steps 1 through 7 and are ready to go out and make their ninth step amends, please consider these two questions. Do you believe in a higher power that can now help you with all these defects, every one? And are you now ready to let God remove from you all the things which you have admitted are objectionable in your fourth and fifth steps? So if you feel comfortable and you'd like to, thumbs up or shake your head or whatever, say yes to those questions. Everybody wants to do that. Right. That is the sixth step. That's pretty good. And answer these one at a time. Those of you who answered yes to these questions have completed the sixth step. Congratulations, and are ready to proceed to step 7. If you are not willing to go to God with one or more of these defects, please remember to pray daily for the willingness and it will come. But still go on to step 7 with the rest of the flaws you are willing to let God help you with. In the big book, step 7 is straightforward. It consists of a prayer. The second paragraph on page 76 contains the seventh step prayer. It reads, when ready, we say something like this: My Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen. We would like each of you who is ready to take the seventh step to read the prayer along with us a second time. Let's read the seventh step prayer together as a group. My Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen. And from now on, please include the third and the seventh step prayers as part of your daily prayer life. Also remember that each of you is given a seventh step card to assist you in working this step going forward. So I hope everybody got that card that was attached to the information that Flossie sent out. Not only is this a great way to include God in on relieving our shortcomings, but it's also a great way to affirm daily the direction within ourselves that we are trying to move forward. That we're trying to move toward. Also, be sure to write your 8th step harms list and begin to go out to set the wrongs, to set right the wrongs that you have done. Be sure to talk with your sponsor and step support group before doing each amends so that the amends are done considerately and in a way where no further harm is done. So, congratulations. You are the ones who are in the process of experiencing the personality change sufficient to bring about recovery from alcoholism. We are so happy that you are doing what it takes to move away from self imposed misery by participating in all of AA's spiritual solution. You have chosen to let God direct your lives. Let's see what we need to do in order to expand this new God consciousness. We need to live the 10th, 11th, and 12th steps on a daily basis. So let's start with step 10. Continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. Notice that the 10th step says that when we were wrong, we promptly admit it. It doesn't say that when we were wrong, we promptly justify it. The first three steps are designed to bring us to the point where we become willing to turn our will and our lives over to the care of a higher power. Steps 4 through 9 are how we turn our will and our lives over by removing what blocks us from actually doing so. And the last three steps are how we keep our will and our lives turned over to God indefinitely. A large part of step 10 is a summary of steps 4 through 9 to be used quickly on a moment by moment basis throughout each day. Step 11 shows us how to deepen and broaden our conscious contact with the God of our understanding. And step 12 gives us the goals of the steps, which is a spiritual awakening. Tells us how to carry our life-changing message to others and gives us many tips on how to practice these principles in all our affairs. So now please turn to the middle of page 84. The key to step 10 are the words, continue to take personal inventory. The big book emphasizes the importance of continuing to take the steps. The middle of page 84 says, this brings us to step 10, which suggests we continue to take personal inventory and continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along. We vigorously commence this way of living. As we cleaned up the past, so the book tells us when to start vigorously using the tools of step 10 and 11. These two steps should be practiced as we start cleaning up the past by making our ninth step amends. And the book continues, we have entered the world of the spirit. Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. And grow in understanding and effectiveness of what? Of being in and inspired by the world of the spirit. The book continues, this is not an overnight matter. It should continue for our lifetime. In this paragraph, the authors tell us how to live one day at a time. We call this our 24-hour plan. We continue to take inventory, continue to make amends, and continue to help others every day. Let's look at the third step sentence. No, I'm sorry. Let's look at the third sentence in this paragraph again. It is very important. It reads, we have entered the world of the spirit. This sentence contains an amazing revelation. Basically, the big book has just informed us that our lives have already changed as the result of taking steps 1 through 9. They state that we have already had a spiritual awakening. How could that be? Well, it's very simple. There is no way a newcomer can get through these steps alone. You have not only developed a belief in a God of your understanding, but you have come to rely upon this power to help you through the inventory and restitution process. You are now living in the solution. Some of you may not realize it yet, but the psychic change that Dr. Silkworth mentioned in the doctor's opinion as being essential has now occurred. Further down on page 84, the authors tell us precisely how to take a 10th step, moment by moment inventory. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. We did this first in step 4. When these crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. And this is referring to steps 6 and 7. And it's not suggesting that we ask our higher power to at once remove them. It's saying that we at once ask God to remove them. Also, notice that this line says when these crop up, not if these crop up. So we need to stay aware of when selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear are resurfacing throughout our life. And step 10 is not to be taken only at night, as it is sometimes suggested in our fellowship. The book says that it's to be taken all through the day, whenever these things crop up, moment by moment, as soon as we become aware of them. The book continues. We discuss them with someone immediately, and that's step 5. and make amends quickly if we have harmed anyone. And that's steps 8 and 9. Then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help, and not just anybody, but somebody that we can help. And that's step 12. Love and tolerance of others is our code. Now, this next line can also be considered as part of the directions for taking this step. Uh-oh, where did I go? Hold on. My screen just changed. Okay. This line can also be considered as part of the directions for taking this step. And we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. This part of step 10 is certainly easier said than done, but it's important for us to make it a priority and to start moving in the direction of no longer fighting or arguing with anything or anyone. So the big book provides us with specific instructions on how to rid ourselves of these self-centered behaviors. First, we must continue realizing, as we did in step 3, that self-centered behaviors are not consistent with God's plan for our lives, and they will only lead us back to drinking. Next, we must continue taking the actions necessary to move away from self-will toward God's will. We ask God to remove these shortcomings. We discuss them with our sponsor or spiritual advisor, and if necessary, we set right, to the best of our ability, any wrong we have done. Then we try to focus on someone we can help. So it's watch, ask, discuss, amend, and turn. I'll say that again. It's watch, ask, discuss, amend, and turn. And the big book affirms that if we do the work of steps 1 through 9 and apply the 10th step on a daily basis, God will remove the obsession to drink. This is another of the many promises we find throughout the steps in this book. They are the 10th step promises, and they are sometimes called the forgotten promises because we usually only refer to the 9th step ones. As a matter of fact, most of the steps in this book have specific promises associated with them. And at the bottom of page 84, they write, and we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol, for by this time sanity will have returned. We will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it as from a hot flame. We react sanely and normally, and we will find that this has happened automatically. We will see that our new attitude toward liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That is the miracle of it. We are not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we had been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We have not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. And the problem that they're talking about here is the mental obsession and the spiritual malady. It does not exist for us. We are neither cocky nor are we afraid. This is our experience. Now, here's a warning. That is how we react so long as, or if, we keep in fit spiritual condition. So, what is part of keeping fit spiritually? Taking a daily inventory. And then what's our reward? Is a daily reprieve. There's an expression that describes the 10th step perfectly. It goes something like this. If we remove our garbage promptly, our house doesn't stink. I'm sure if you think about that, everybody here can relate. But the big book describes this daily reprieve in the middle of page 85. It's easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. Our laurels are our past victories. And if you know, like in the old days, the Olympics and the Greeks early on, when somebody would win an event, they would have those laurels, those leaves that they would make like a crown and they would put it around people's heads. And you see them a lot of times on Grecian statues, and so those are laurels. So you're a victor. You've done the best you could possibly do. You're the best at what you do. It's gotten as good as it gets. We don't stop there. We have to keep going. We don't rest on our past victories. The book continues with a warning. We are headed for trouble if we do, for alcohol is a subtle foe. We are not cured of alcoholism. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent or dependent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. Now, please notice these next few sentences. Every day is a day when we must carry the vision of God's will into all of our activities. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These are thoughts which must go with us constantly. We can exercise our willpower along this line all we wish. This is the proper use of the will. Another reward is God consciousness, direct contact with our higher power. And the next paragraph on page 85, the Big Book tells us, much has already been said about receiving strength, inspiration, and direction from Him who has all knowledge and power. If we carefully follow directions, we have begun to sense the flow of His Spirit into us. To some extent, we have become God conscious. We have begun to develop this vital sixth sense, but we must go further, and that means more action. Once again, the authors declare that our lives have changed. We've already had the spiritual awakening. They say we have become conscious of the spirit of the universe, and we are now receiving strength, inspiration, and direction from this spirit. Not only that, but they say that this sixth sense is vital or absolutely essential. So now it's time to find out who is ready to proceed. The directions for taking the 10th step are found in the second paragraph on page 84. Starting with line 2 on page 84, the Big Book writes, we continue to take personal inventory and continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along. Will those who are working the steps with us have had completed their 5th, 6th, and 7th steps, please answer this one at a time, yes or no. Will you continue to take personal inventory on a moment-by-moment basis as you have just seen outlined on page 84 and continue to set right any new mistakes as you go along? Anybody want to say yes to that? Yes? Thumbs up? Anybody ready for doing that? So the other thing is like when they're saying this on a moment to moment basis, I'm not walking around all the time like God help me, or I'm doing, I'm not like, it's not a conscious thing all the time. It gets to be almost like a subconscious thing. Like I just start to have the experience of God everywhere I go. And I don't necessarily have to say like, oh, that's a beautiful sky, God, or that's a beautiful, oh, this is God, 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 God. I know I'm just in constant conscious contact with him. I know, I know these things are part of my higher powers world. And I think just being appreciative, being positive is what they're talking about here. Personal inventory, how am I doing? If I'm walking around angry or, you know, anxious or fearful all the time, that's not what I think God would have me doing. And so that means that I can go back and I can look at what am I missing here? Something's missing. There's a tool here. There's a step here that will help me to switch it up so that I can be what they promise, happy, joyous, and free. I'm not talking about happy all the time, but that I know that things, life on life's terms, I don't always like it, but I have everything I need to help me to be able to go along here and not make any more new mistakes by hurting other people. And then the next one is, um, let's see, that's the 10th step question. All of you who have answered yes to this question are ready and willing to practice step 10, which is the striving to carry the vision of God's will into all of our activities. But when we fall short, practicing steps 4 through 9 to be used quickly on a moment by moment basis throughout each day, one day at a time. And that's how I am with these steps, you guys. Like if I'm having a problem with something or somebody, I could put my head on the pillow and I can take them through the steps. I just ask myself those questions, do I feel powerless? Is my life becoming unmanageable? Do I feel insane because I'm trying to force a result here? And that's what these steps can do. I mean, I don't have to go through them formally all the time, and I can take one person, place, or thing through them pretty quickly just by doing this kind of an inventory. And as you become more familiar with them and you see how they work, you can see how they're so powerful to be able to do that, to just live the steps. And so step 11 says, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. That goes back to the ABCs where it says in C, God could and would if he were sought. How do I find him? Through prayer and meditation, improving my conscious contact with God as I understand him or don't understand him. I don't really understand him. I think if he was small enough for me to understand, he wouldn't be big enough to do everything he needs to do. I'm only praying for knowledge of his will and the power to carry it out. And to somebody who shall remain nameless, who shall remain nameless, is Flossie, who always says this is one of the cop-out steps. He's like, you mean that's all I have to do is ask God for his will and then the power to carry it out? That's all I have to do? And it's like, yeah, that's pretty much it. Oh, that's easy. All right, good. Let me know how that works for you, because it's, Easier said than done. So, but it is, the thing is that I have help with it, whatever is going on. Whatever's going on, I have help. This is a great tool, the 11th step. And it's funny because, it's not 11 and a half step program, it's a 12-step program. 11th step is prayer and meditation. And I have a quote that I love about the 11th step about meditation. It says, praying without meditating is like ringing God's doorbell and then running away. Like I need to hold on, get quiet, sit with it, wait on God. Don't make him try to wait on you. And so it says the 11th step starts at the bottom of page 85 and extends through page 88. It's a good idea to read steps 10 and 11 out of the big book each day for a few months as part of your morning time with God until you internalize the incredibly effective way of life these two steps offer. There is a lot contained in these 4 pages. As we have already seen, the big book has been writing about prayer and meditation throughout the book. At the bottom of page 85, we find Step 11 suggests prayer and meditation. We shouldn't be shy on this matter of prayer. Better men than we are using it constantly. It works if we, number 1, have the proper attitude, and number 2, work at it. So for it to work, we need to use action and attitude, just like if you're going to the gym. What does the big book mean when it says it works? In essence, it is telling us that self-examination, meditation, and prayer puts us in contact with our Creator. Hopefully, that's what we've been doing these past weeks, making conscious contact with the God of our understanding. Then, at the top of page 86, they make the statement, it would be easy to be vague about this matter, yet we believe that we can make some definite and valuable suggestions. At night, they suggest we review the day's activities. Once again, they ask us to use the AA self-will test to judge our actions. Page 86, paragraph 1. When we retire at night, we constructively review our day. Were we resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid? And that's step 4 again. Do we owe an apology? And that's steps 8 and 9. Have we kept something to ourselves which should be discussed with another person at once? That's step 5. Were we kind and loving toward all? What could we have done better? Were we thinking of ourselves most of the time, or were we thinking of what we could do for others, of what we could pack into the stream of life? But we must be careful not to drift into worry, remorse, or morbid reflection, for that would diminish our usefulness to others. After making our review, we ask God's forgiveness and inquire what corrective measures should be taken. Step 6 and 7. So our basic text is once again basically describing the process of steps 4 through 9 being used in a quick way to review our day when we retire at night. And the book continues, on awakening, not on our way to work, nor after we've showered and eaten, nor at some point in the morning, but as soon as we wake up. Let us think about the 24 hours ahead. We consider our plans for the day. Before we begin, we ask God to direct our thinking, especially asking that it be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives. And it's another reference back to the 3rd step. Under these conditions, we can employ our mental faculties with assurance, for after all, God gave us brains to use. Our thought life will be placed on a much higher plane when our thinking is cleared of wrong motives. So the book tells us to meditate first thing in the morning. Let's look at the sentence beginning with, before we begin, we ask God to direct our thinking. Please notice these words. They are very important. Before we begin. Before we begin what? Before we begin considering our plans for this day, and before listening to our inner voice. How do we know we're supposed to listen to God? Because right afterward it says we ask God to direct our thinking. And if we ask God to direct our thinking, especially asking that it be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives, doesn't it stand to reason that our next thoughts are possibly going to be from our higher power? What do we call these thoughts from God? We call these thoughts guidance. The big book tells us that our Creator will provide us with the answers to all of our issues. They even disclose how the Spirit of the universe is going to answer our request for help. At the bottom of page 86, they write, in thinking about our day, we may face indecision. We may not be able to determine which course to take. And now here's some prayer. Here we ask God for inspiration, an intuitive thought or a decision. We relax and take it easy. We don't struggle. We are often surprised how the right answers come after we have tried this for a while. So, God is going to tell us His plan for our lives in the form of inspiration, an intuitive thought, or an intuitive decision, and in some cases, God speaks through others. The Big Book tells us to test our thoughts. Not all of them come from God, but with time and practice, we begin to rely upon this insight. On the top of page 87, they write, what used to be the hunch or the occasional inspiration gradually becomes a working part of the mind. That's a promise, but here's a warning. Being still inexperienced and having just made conscious contact with God, it is not probable that we are going to be inspired at all times. We may pay for this presumption in all sorts of absurd actions and ideas. Nevertheless, we find that our thinking will, as time passes, be more and more on the plane of inspiration. We come to rely upon it. And that's another lovely promise. To protect ourselves from absurd actions and ideas, we must test our thoughts to separate self will from God's will. Our identifying God's will needs time to grow, so it's important to discuss these inspirations or thoughts with a sponsor or spiritual advisor. In the 12 and 12 on page 60, it also says, going it alone in spiritual matters is dangerous. How many times have we heard well-intentioned people claim the guidance of God when it was all too plain they were sorely mistaken? The Big Book continues on page 87, paragraph 1. We usually conclude the period of meditation with a prayer that we be shown all through the day what our next step is to be, that we be given whatever we need to take care of such problems. We ask especially for freedom from self-will and are careful to make no request for ourselves only. We may ask for ourselves, however, if others will be helped. We are careful never to pray for our own selfish ends. Many of us have wasted a lot of time doing that and it doesn't work, and you can, I hope, easily see why. The book is giving us information to create a healthy prayer life. First thing is that we pray for freedom from self-will. And the second is never to request for ourselves only, but we can request for ourselves if others will be helped. And the book continues. If circumstances warrant, we ask our wives or friends to join us in morning meditation. If we belong to a religious denomination which requires a definite morning devotion, we attend to that also. If not members of religious bodies, we sometimes select and memorize a few set prayers which emphasize the principles we have been discussing. There are many helpful books also. Suggestions about these may be obtained from one's priest, minister, or rabbi. Be quick to see where religious people are right. Many make use of what they offer. There are many powerful things that can help improve our conscious contact. Perhaps ask others what influenced them on their spiritual path. Next paragraph. As we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful and ask for the right thought or action. And please notice here that agitation comes well before anger or rage, and being doubtful comes well before being in deep trouble or scared. Starting with the last line of page 87, the book tells us that we must get out of self-will in order to learn God's plan for our lives. In other words, here is another reminder of the commitment we made in step 3. We constantly remind ourselves we are no longer running the show, humbly saying to ourselves many times each day, "Thy will be done." Now here's the results of working step 11, otherwise known as the rest of the 11th step promises. We are then in much less danger of excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, or foolish decisions. We become much more efficient. We do not tire so easily, for we are not burning up energy foolishly as we did when we were trying to arrange life to suit ourselves. It works. It really does. This is an ironclad guarantee. It works. From first-hand experience, we can state that guidance has been working in our lives ever since we began this daily practice. That's a huge promise right there. But what if we don't receive any God-given thoughts or guidance? Let us assure you this can happen from time to time. Remember, all we really have is a daily reprieve contingent upon the maintenance of our spiritual condition. If we don't receive any guidance, it means we might still be blocked off from our higher power in some way and simply have some work to do to clear the way. God's guidance is as freely available as the air we breathe. If I am not receiving inspired thoughts when I try to listen, the fault is not God's. Usually it's because there's something I will not do, something wrong in my life that I will not face and make right, a habit or an indulgence I will not give up, a person I will not forgive, a wrong relationship in my life I will not give up. Maybe we've taken back our will in some areas of our lives, or maybe we haven't done something we know our higher power wants us to do. Check these points to be honest. If this is the case, we need to take the actions necessary to reestablish our connection with our Creator, and then try listening again. In the second paragraph on page 88, they tell us that once again we need God's help. We alcoholics are undisciplined, so we let God discipline us in the simple way we have just outlined. But this is not all. There is action and more action. Faith without works is dead. Self-examination, meditation, and prayer take dedication and practice. If we do the work, we will receive the rewards, a life filled with health, happiness, and peace of mind beyond our wildest dreams. In the 12 and 12, during the commentary about the 11th step on page 98, it says the following. There is a direct linkage among self-examination, meditation, and prayer. Taken separately, these practices can bring much relief and benefit. But when they are logically related and interwoven, the result is an unshakable foundation for life. Now and then we may be granted a glimpse of that ultimate reality which is God's kingdom, and we will be comforted and assured that our own destiny in that realm will be secure for so long as we try, however falteringly, to find and do the will of our Creator. And that's in the 12 and 12 on page 98 and the 11th step. That's a beautiful paragraph. So we will conclude our discussion of the 11th step with a moment of silence so each of us can make contact with the God of our understanding and see if we receive guidance right now. As we go into this meditation time, please try to be quiet and still. Remember to ask God to direct your thinking, especially asking that it be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, or selfish, self-seeking motives. And let's see what happens when we try to experience conscious contact. Say to yourself silently something like this. God, I now ask you to direct my thinking. I especially ask that these thoughts be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives. And we'll take 3 or 4 minutes of silence to see how we do. Okay, thank you. If something came to you during this meditation, you may want to write it down and then share it with someone later to see if the two of you think that it may be God-inspired thoughts. Then go out and do whatever you were guided to do. And it really is that simple. You really do want to run it by somebody, though, if it seems something odd to you that you trust that's living life on a spiritual basis. It's very helpful. At the bottom of page 88, it says the next chapter is entirely devoted to step 12. That does not mean that all the information on step 12 can be found in this chapter, but that this chapter is only going to be talking about step 12. As a matter of fact, this chapter, which is called Working with Others, gives us the part of step 12 that deals only with ways to carry this message to other alcoholics. Chapter 8 to wives, Chapter 9, the family afterward, and Chapter 10 to employers gives us more information about working with a new person, as well as what to keep in mind when trying to practice these principles in all of our affairs. So now let's move on to the 12th step. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. If you really look at the last three steps, you'll notice that the 10th step talks about continuing, and the 11th step talks about seeking and improving, and the 12th step talks about practicing and in all our affairs. So our program leaves no room for complacency or coasting. And besides, the only way you can coast is if you're going downhill. So the steps are kind of like walking up a down escalator. If you keep moving and you can get to the next level, you can get to the next level. But if you slow down or stop moving, it brings you right back down to where you came from. And I don't know about you, but I desperately do not want to go back to where I came from. So now that we've made conscious contact with the God of our understanding, we have received that greatest gift of this program, a spiritual awakening. God is now guiding us in such a way that it is indeed miraculous. This life-changing experience comes suddenly to some, as in a spiritual experience, and gradually to others, as in a spiritual awakening. Let's see what else we can learn about this miraculous event. Please turn once again to Appendix 2 on page 569 in the third edition, or page 567 in the fourth edition. This appendix was written after the publication of the first printing of the Big Book in April of 1939. And in the first printing on page 567 in the fourth edition, the 12th step read, having had a spiritual experience as a result of these steps. And in the 2 years between the first and the second printings, the word experience in the 12th step was discussed at length. As time went by, letters from alcoholics started to come in to the main office from people who did the work out of the Big Book and did not have the white light spiritual experience that Bill Wilson had. They were writing to see if the more gradual spiritual awakening that they were having meant that they could not recover from alcoholism. This was the reason for adding Appendix 2. Eventually, the word experience was replaced with the word awakening in the 12th step. The Big Book authors made this modification in order to include those whose lives had truly changed, but more slowly over a period of time. Many of you will find this to be the case also. Your life has changed, but gradually rather than suddenly. You may not be able to point to a specific experience or event that brought about the change, but the spiritual awakening has occurred nonetheless. At the top of page 569, if you have a third edition, or 567 in the fourth edition, the authors define the term spiritual awakening. The terms spiritual experience, spiritual awakening, and of course, Dr. Silkworth in the Doctor's Opinion calls it a psychic change, are used many times in this book, which, upon careful reading, shows that the personality change sufficient to bring about recovery from alcoholism has manifested itself among us in many different forms. Yet it is true that our first printing gave many readers the impression that these personality changes or religious experiences must be in the nature of sudden and spectacular upheavals. Happily for everyone, this conclusion is erroneous, which means incorrect. A spiritual awakening is nothing more than a psychic change that, among other things, eliminates our obsession to drink. So Bill Wilson's rapid conversion experience at Towns Hospital, although it is similar to other experiences in our fellowship, is the exception rather than the rule. Further down on page 569 in the third edition, or 567 in the fourth edition, in paragraph 4, page 567, we find the description of a more gradual spiritual experience. Among our rapidly growing membership of thousands of alcoholics, such transformations, though frequent, are by no means the rule. Most of our experiences are what the psychologist William James calls the educational variety, because they develop slowly over a period of time. Quite often, friends of the newcomer are aware of the difference long before he is himself. He finally realizes that he has undergone a profound alteration in his reaction to life, that such a change could hardly have been brought about by himself alone. What often takes place in a few months could seldom have been accomplished by years of self-discipline. With few exceptions, our members find that they have tapped an unsuspected inner resource which they presently identify with their own conception of a power greater than themselves. It's like hitting oil, right? Pretty good. As we read the next few lines in the book, we learn just how easy it is to have a spiritual awakening. Most of us think this awareness of a power greater than ourselves is the essence of a spiritual experience. Our more religious members call it God consciousness. That's all there is to it. If you've made contact with the God of your understanding and try to follow your higher power's guidance, you have in fact already had the spiritual awakening. Congratulations, you are now living in the sunlight of the Spirit. But the spiritual awakening is just the first part of the 12th step. Let's look at what we have to do to sustain this spiritual transformation. Please turn back to the page 89, and at the top, chapter 7 on page 89, in its entirety, is devoted to carrying the message of Alcoholics Anonymous to others. The Big Book authors tell us that what we must do to enlarge our new God consciousness. The top of page 89 says, practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. It works when other activities fail. This is our 12th suggestion. Carry this message to other alcoholics. You can help when no one else can. You can secure their confidence when others fail. Like with Al-Anons, with OA, GA, whatever it is, you can talk to somebody and they can identify, and that's the reason that this works, is that um, identification. That's the ticket. When we work with others, our lives change. Like it was said before, we don't help another alcoholic because they're sick. We help another alcoholic because we are sick. And part of our program of recovery is that we need to be helping others. In the second paragraph on page 89, the authors give us some of the results of working step 12, otherwise known as some of the 12th step promises. And so the second paragraph on page 89, life will take on a new meaning. To watch people recover, to see them help others, to watch loneliness vanish, to see a fellowship grow up about you, to have a host of friends, this is an experience you must not miss. We know you will not want to miss it. Frequent contact with newcomers and with each other is the bright spot of our lives. On pages 80 through 103, the authors provide us with specific instructions on how to carry our life-saving message of recovery to others. They offer many valuable suggestions on these pages, and for now, we're only going to highlight a few of them. At the top of page 90, they say through pages 80 through 103, but we're going to go to the top of page 90, and they start with the following advice. When you discover a prospect for Alcoholics Anonymous, find out all you can about him. If he does not want to stop drinking, in other words, if he is not willing to go to any lengths, don't waste time trying to persuade him. You may spoil a later opportunity. In the middle of page 91, the Big Book authors even provide us with specifics on what to say. First, we tell this prospect our story. See your man alone if possible. And they're not suggesting that we do 12th step work by ourselves. They're suggesting that the AAs should be alone in the room with the new person so they're not distracted by the alcoholic's friends or family. The book continues. At first, engage in general conversation. After a while, turn the talk to some phase of drinking. Tell him enough about your drinking habits, symptoms, and experiences to encourage him to speak of himself. If he wishes to talk, let him do so. You will thus get a better idea of how you ought to proceed. Then on page 92, paragraph 1, it says, if you are satisfied that he is a real alcoholic, begin to dwell on the hopeless feature of the malady. So it's saying here that we need to be satisfied that they are a real alcoholic. We need to qualify them by talking about what differentiates an alcoholic from a non alcoholic and seeing if they can relate to the drinking experience of an alcoholic. The book continues. Show him from your own experience how the queer mental condition or mental blank spot surrounding that first drink prevents normal functioning of the willpower. So, in other words, that his best thinking cannot keep him from the next drink. Please turn to the bottom of page 94 where it says the following. Your candidate may give reasons why he need not follow all of the program. He may rebel at the thought of a drastic house cleaning, which requires discussion with other people. Do not contradict such views. Tell him you once felt as he does, but you doubt whether you would have made much progress had you not taken action. So see how easy it is? For the next several pages, we're provided additional suggestions on what to say and what not to say, what to do and what not to do during our 12th step calls. And then at the top of page 96, the authors tell us not to give up if we are unsuccessful at getting through to the prospect. Basically, they tell us to plant the seed and move on. Top of page 96. Do not be discouraged if your prospect does not respond at once. Search out another alcoholic and try again. You are sure to find someone desperate enough to accept with eagerness what you offer. We find it a waste of time to keep chasing a man who cannot or will not work with you. If you leave such a person alone, he may soon become convinced that he cannot recover by himself. To spend too much time on any one situation is to deny some other alcoholic an opportunity to live and be happy. In the middle of the first full paragraph on page 98, they tell us what to do about the person who makes one excuse after another about why he or she can't stop drinking. Middle of the first full paragraph on page 98. He clamors for this or that, claiming he cannot master alcohol until his material needs are cared for. Nonsense. Some of us have taken very hard knocks to learn this truth. Job or no job, wife or no wife, we simply do not stop drinking so long as we place dependence upon other people ahead of dependence on God. Burn the idea into the consciousness of every man that he can get well regardless of anyone. The only condition is that he trust in God and clean house. How much simpler can it get? Like Dr. Bob said in his last major talk, trust God, clean house, and help others. In the first paragraph on page 100, the big book authors tell us we grow spiritually when we sponsor someone and help them work the steps. Page 100, first paragraph. Both you and the new man must walk day by day in the path of spiritual progress. If you persist, remarkable things will happen. Please notice the rest of this paragraph because it contains what some consider the greatest promise in this book. When we look back, we realize that the things which came to us when we put ourselves in God's hands were better than anything we could have planned. Follow the dictates of a higher power, and you will presently, not some far off time and place, but here and now, you will presently live in a new and wonderful world, no matter what your present circumstances. And starting at the bottom of page 100, there are a few statements that may not be very popular to some in our fellowship. You will rarely hear this part of the big book brought up at meetings. Follow along with me as I read how the authors describe the true freedom and serenity that thoroughly working this entire program brings us. Assuming we are spiritually fit, we can do all sorts of things alcoholics are not supposed to do. People have said we must not go where liquor is served. We must not have it in our homes. We must shun friends who drink. We must avoid moving pictures where showing drinking scenes. We must not go into bars. Our friends must hide their bottles if we go to their houses. We mustn't think or be reminded about alcohol at all. Our experience shows that this is not necessarily so. We meet these conditions every day. An alcoholic who cannot meet them still has an alcoholic mind. There is something the matter with his spiritual status. His only chance for sobriety would be some place like the Greenland ice cap, and even there an Eskimo might turn up with a bottle of scotch and ruin everything. Ask any woman who has sent her husband to distant places on the theory he would escape the alcohol problem. In our belief, any scheme of combating alcoholism which proposes to shield the sick man from temptation is doomed to failure. If the alcoholic tries to shield himself, he may succeed for a time, but he usually winds up with a bigger explosion than ever. We have tried these methods. These attempts to do the impossible have always failed. So our rule is not to avoid a place where there is drinking if we have a legitimate reason for being there. That includes bars, nightclubs, dances, receptions, weddings, and even plain ordinary whoopee parties. To a person who has had experience with an alcoholic, this may seem like tempting providence, but it isn't. You will note that we made an important qualification. Therefore, ask yourself on each occasion, have I any good social, business, or personal reasons for going to this place? Or am I expecting to steal a little vicarious, which means secondhand, pleasure from the atmosphere of such places? If you answer these questions satisfactorily, you need have no apprehension. Go or stay away, whichever seems best. But be sure you are on solid spiritual ground before you start and that your motive in going is thoroughly good. Do not think of what you will get out of the occasion. Think of what you can bring to it. But if you are shaky, you had better work with another alcoholic instead. Why sit with a long face in places where there is drinking, sighing about the good old days? If it is a happy occasion, try to increase the pleasure of those there. If a business occasion, go and attend to your business enthusiastically. If you are with a person who wants to eat in a bar, by all means go along. Let your friend know they are not to change their habits on your account. At a proper time and place, explain to all your friends why alcohol disagrees with you. If you do this thoroughly, few people will ask you to drink. While you were drinking, you were withdrawing from life little by little. Now you are getting back into the social life of this world. Don't start to withdraw again just because your friends drink liquor. And we've all been to meetings where they have, like, especially around the holidays and stuff, where they talk about going to parties or weddings or events, and they say have a plan B, like if you need to bring your own car, if you're going to need to leave, like take care of yourself. So there's a lot of really wonderful tools to handle situations. But basically here it's saying that if I can't go to these places because I'm scared of liquor, then liquor still is my higher power, and I'm still letting it run my life. So uh, if I have a good enough reason to be there, I'll be able to go without worrying. And it says, if I cannot go to a wedding because alcohol will be served there, then alcohol is still telling me what I can and cannot do. That does not sound like much freedom to me. It's important to keep in mind that the authors bring this up only after presenting all of the steps and assume that the reader has worked them all and is as spiritually fit as the result of those steps. God is now our new employer. In the last full paragraph on page 102, the book gives us a new job description. Your job now is to be at the place where you may be of maximum helpfulness to others. So never hesitate to go anywhere if you can be helpful. You should not hesitate to visit the most sordid, which means morally degraded, spot on earth on such an errand. Keep on the firing line of life with these motives, and God will keep you unharmed. This completes chapter 7. Like it was said at the beginning of step 12, chapter 8, to wives, chapter 9, the family afterwards, and chapter 10, to employers, also contain many tips on how to practice these principles in all our affairs. And these chapters contain other points on how to be most effective in dealing with new members of AA. If what is mentioned in these 3 chapters works for our family and friends, it can certainly work for us in dealing with people we sponsor. So due to time restraints, we'll be unable to highlight these 3 chapters, so please make yourselves familiar with them. So that's to the wives, to the family afterward, and to the employers. Just so we can highlight just one point out of these 3 chapters, please turn to page 120 in the chapter to wives. The big book authors even tell us what to do if we relapse. The middle of the first page of the first full paragraph on page 120, the middle of the first full paragraph on page 120 says, though it is infinitely better that he have no relapse at all, as has been true with many of our men, it is by no means a bad thing in some cases. Your husband will see at once that he must redouble his spiritual activities if he expects to survive. You need not remind him of his spiritual deficiency. He will know of it. Being of service to others is critical to the continued growth and maintenance of our sobriety. Keep in mind that one of the primary services we can perform is to take prospective members through the 12 steps, just like we did during these beginners' meetings. Each time we do this, we learn more about this life saving program and gain additional insight into the divine inspiration that is the heart of our new way of life. Who knows, maybe in a short time some of you will be back to lead these sessions. As we have discovered, conducting these beginners meetings is a real test of how well we are beginning to know and live the AA program, which is found in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Now all that's left is to practice these principles in all our affairs. What principles? The 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. They are the principles we practice daily for the rest of our lives. So please turn to page 164, and the Big Book authors conclude with yet one more statement concerning the importance of divine guidance and the necessity of working with others. On page 164, starting with the first full paragraph, the book says, "Still, you may say, but I will not have the benefit of contact with you who write this book. We cannot be sure. God will determine that. So you must remember that your real reliance is always upon Him. He will show you how to create the fellowship you crave. Our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Ask Him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who is still sick. Of course, we can't do this if we don't have a morning meditation practice. So the answers will come if your own house is in order. But obviously, you cannot transmit something you haven't got. See to it that your relationship with Him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. This is the great fact for us. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. That's steps 1, 2, and 3. Admit your faults to Him and to your fellows, and that's steps 4, 5, 6, and 7. Yeah, 4 through 7. Clear away the wreckage of your past, steps 8 and 9. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge, which means to walk with purpose and effort, the road of happy destiny, steps 10, 11, and 12. May God bless you and keep you until then. We are going to close this session by reading part of page 25. We have waited until now to share this page with you because back when we started this journey, you may not have fully understood the significance of what is written here. Having completed the 12 steps and having had the spiritual awakening, you are now in a position to see these words from an entirely new perspective. Your life has changed. You now realize there is a solution. Page 25, starting with the first full paragraph. There is a solution. Almost none of us liked the self-searching, the leveling of our pride, the confession of shortcomings which the process requires for its successful consummation. But we saw that it really worked in others, and we had come to believe in the hopelessness and futility of life as we had been living it. When therefore we were approached by those in whom the problem had been solved, there was nothing left for us but to pick up the simple kit of spiritual tools laid at our feet. We have found much of heaven, and we have been rocketed into a fourth dimension of existence of which we had not even dreamed. The great fact is this, and nothing less, that we have deep and effective spiritual experiences which have revolutionized our whole attitude toward life, toward our fellows, and toward God's universe. The central fact of our lives today is the absolute certainty that our Creator has entered into our hearts and lives in a way which is indeed miraculous. He has commenced to accomplish those things for us which we could never do by ourselves. If you are as seriously alcoholic as we were, we believe there is no middle of the road solution. We were in a position where life was becoming impossible. And if we had passed into the region from which there is no return through human aid, We had but two alternatives. One was to go on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation as best we could, and the other to accept spiritual help. We want to welcome each of you who have completed these weekly sessions to the sunlight of the spirit and the fourth dimension of existence. We are committed to supporting and encouraging each of you as you move toward working this life changing design for daily living that is the 12 steps. We thank you for providing us with the opportunity to participate in our own recovery and to be a part of your miraculous spiritual journey. And in closing, I would love to ask if you have any questions, and since we have a little bit of time, we would like anybody to who feels comfortable to share with the group any of their experiences while working the steps during these beginners meetings. This is an opportunity for sharing the changes that are occurring in your lives as the result of having worked the steps with us over the last few weeks. And if anybody would like to share, please just unmute and yeah, thank you. And if you would like to talk about how you experienced these last 5 weeks, and congratulations, because that's a pretty big deal what we just did. So
So just a
thank,
quick question, Rosemary. Should I stop recording?
yeah, thank you.
Okay.